week. So the ones on page 378, we were solving quadratics, and then the other ones then on page 380, where you were also solving for quadratics. So for these 14 to 17, when you're solving quadratics, now they were asking us to graph them. The only way that we need to be able to graph at Junior Cert is by using the little values that we get at the end, plotting them on the x-axis, and drawing our graph in between them. That's all we have to be able to do at Junior Cert. So let's go for one of these now, and we're going to just take a closer look at how to go about doing these questions. So what I'm going to do over here at the side is I'm going to answer that question here, and then we'll talk through the rest of them. So the first one was x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0. So first thing I need to do is I need to get factors of the last that add to give me the middle. So factors of the last, factors I mean things that multiply to give me the last number, but they need to add to give me the middle number. So to make minus 4, I could have used minus 2 and 2. I could have used minus 4 and 1, or I could have used 4 and minus 1. They're my three different options. So I need to pick one of these now that is going to add to give me minus 3. So minus 3, I'm going to pick these two here, this pair. So remember, you have to pick a pair of them. So that's the pair that I'm going to pick. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rewrite out my sum. And when I rewrite out my sum, I'm going to have x squared minus, I'm writing out the ones that I've picked, 4x and plus 1x, or x minus 4, and then equals 0. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to split my sum in two, and I'm going to take out what's common from the first two. So what's common in the first two is x. So I'm going to take x out, and I'm left with x minus 4. I know that x minus 4 is going to have to be on this side as well, because the bracket has to be the same. So I'm going to write x minus 4 over this side. And all I've taken out to get from here to here is just the number 1. If nothing has changed, I take out a 1. If the signs have not changed, I take out a plus. So my last answer here then is I put this and this in one bracket, and I write out my other bracket. So I have x plus 1, and I have x minus 4. Now that's still equal to 0, I just couldn't fit it on the line above. So it doesn't matter what order we write them in. It could have been the x minus 4 first, or the x plus 1 first, makes no difference. But what I have to do here is I know that I have these two things here, and these two things are sitting beside each other in brackets, means they multiplied to give me 0. Now the only things that can multiply to give me 0 are, if I had, let's say, the number 4, I'd need the number 0. If I had the number 8, I'd need the other number to be 0. If I had the number 0, the other number could be any other number. So just make sure that we know that one of these numbers multiplied by the other to give me 0. So it means one of them has to be 0. Now we don't know which one, so what we're going to do is we're going to have an OR situation. So we'll have two answers here. So I'm going to say, okay, let's say that one was 0. I know x plus 1 equals 0. That's one scenario we could have had. So if x plus 1 equals 0, I want to find what this value is here. So that value would have had to have been at minus 1, because 1 and minus 1 add to give me 0. The other way is to solve this by bringing this over to this side, and it becomes x equals minus 1. And there is my first answer. My second answer then, it could have been that x minus 4 was equal to 0. So in that case, x would have had to have been 4. And I can also do that by just solving, bringing the minus 4 across the equals to become a plus 4. And there's my second answer. So they're the two values of x that we could have had here. So they're the two values of x that I can sub into this line in here and get my answer to equal 0. How you're going to graph that then is you're just popping in a little x and a y-axis. The y-axis makes no difference because you're sketching. So sketching just means use the x-axis. I need minus 1. I need my x-axis. You should be using a ruler for this. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll put my 4 here. I'm putting in my 2 dots. Okay, Because this is a plus x squared, I have a u-shaped graph. And that's it sketched there. If this was a minus x squared, I would do the exact same thing. I would just end up with a negative, n for negative. Okay, you can also think of it as negative is frowny face, positive is smiley face. So that's that question done. The other two questions then that were similar to this, or the three questions, were 15, 16 and 17. So if we take a look at them and we'll read through them. The first one was x squared plus 7x plus 6. So I need to get factors of plus 6 that add to give me 7. So I can use a plus 6 and a plus 1. Remember, you could have used minus 6 and minus 1 if that was a minus 7, but it's not. So now I'm changing this plus 7x to be plus 1x and plus 6x. Taking out what's common from the first two, I take out x. I'm left with x plus 1. I take my x plus 1 and I write it again. And I take out 6 going from here to here. I then have two brackets, x plus 1 and x plus 6 equals 0. So that means for this, x will equal to minus 1, and for this, x will equal to minus 6. I graph this out again. I go from minus 6 to minus 1. Again, the y-axis doesn't make any difference. I know it's a positive x squared, so I'm doing a u-shaped graph, and I'm using the minus 1 and the minus 6. Next question, 16, then this one here. You have 21, positive 21, so the different factors are all written here. 1 and 21, minus 1 and minus 21, 3 and 7, minus 3 and minus 7. I need them to make minus 10, so when I add these together, this last one here adds to give me minus 10. So I replace this with minus 3x minus 7x. Again, I'm taking out what's coming from the first two. X will come out and you're left with x minus 3. I rewrite x minus 3 over this side, and I can see coming from here to here, the sign changed and it divided by 7. So I had to take out a minus because the sign changed, and I had to take out a 7 because it divided by 7. So my line is x minus 3 and x minus 7, which means x equals 3 and x equals 7. Last question here then, I have x squared minus 2x minus 15, so factors of minus 15. So the factors of minus 15, you're going to have minus 1 and 15, 1 and minus 15, 5 and minus 3, minus 3 and 5. I need to add to give a minus 2. So the last ones here add to give us a minus 2. So I write out my sum again with my minus 5x and my plus 3x. And then I'm taking out what's common from the first two, and I'm left with x and x minus 5. I take my x minus 5 and I write it again, and I see how I'm getting from here to here. I'm dividing by 3. I don't change signs for that, so that means I'm taking out a plus 3. My last line then is x minus 5 and x plus 3. So that's x equals positive 5 or x equals minus 3. And I'm sketching all of those again. Doesn't matter what way you could have gone for this graph here. You could have gone like that. It doesn't make any difference as long as it's going through these 2 points, and it's either a U shape if it's positive or an N shape if it's negative. And that's them questions there. Okay, moving on then to the page 380. We're going to do the same thing here. We are going to do out the first question, and then we'll read through the rest. So first question for this was 8x squared plus 14x minus 15 equals 0. Now, because there's a number at the start, I am not getting factors of 15. I am getting factors of 8 times 15. So 8 times 15 is minus 120. I'm getting factors of minus 120. So when I'm doing this in the calculator, if they're high numbers, most of them won't be this high numbers, but if they are, you start at 1 and do 1 and 120, and then 2 and 60, and then 3 and 40, and 4 and 30, and 5, and what does that go in? 120 divided by 5 gives you 24. Okay, 6 and 20. Okay, and I can see now that that's what's going to work. And I keep going with these ones until I end up with this number being smaller than this number. And then that means that I'm going back on myself. And just remember that one of these, because this is negative, one of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. So this could have been minus 1 and 120 or 1 and minus 120. So just remember that these are all doubled. I'm just not going to write out the double of them. So I'm picking these two here. I need a plus 14, so it's going to be at minus 6. So when I go to do out this sum, I have 8x squared. I've changed this to be plus 20x and minus 6x and minus 15 equals 0. Doesn't matter what way you put these. You could have put the minus 6 first or the 20 first. Makes no difference at all. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw my line down the middle. And I'm going to take out what's common. So coming out of the first, 4 will divide in and x will go in. So now I'm left with 4 by what gives me 8, that's 2. Or just divide each of these by 4. So 2x and plus 5. So I'm going to take my 2x and my plus 5. I'm going to write it over here. Okay, and I can see that I've divided both of these by 3. So I've taken out a 3. Sorry. The signs have also changed. So if the signs have changed, I know I need to take out a minus. So my last line, 4x minus 3 and 2x plus 5. Okay, for this, a little trickier from where we're going from here. But again, just remember, it doesn't matter if this one was first or this one was first. It makes no difference what order they're put in. But just make sure that this all is in one bracket and this all is in another bracket. Again, we know here that this multiplied by this to give me 0. So one of these is equal to 0. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write out 4x minus 3 equals 0. That's a possibility. And we're going to solve. The other possibility is 2x plus 5 equals 0. And we're going to solve that as well. So solve means get x on its own. So to get x on its own, I'm going to move this across first, and that is going to become 4x equals plus 3 plus 0, so that's just plus 3. I'm going to do the same on this side. 2x, when that plus 5 goes across, it's going to become minus 5. Okay, I want to get x on its own, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 4 on each side, so I'm left with x equals 3 over 4, and here I'm going to divide 2 on both sides to get x on its own, so I'll be left with x equals minus 5 over 2. Now just to be aware of it, the other thing you can do, let's say I had a different one, 3x minus 7 equals 0. What you're doing is you're changing the sign on this and you're dividing by this. So if I change the sign, I'll have plus 7 over 3. That's just a quick way of doing it. If I was to do the ones above and I use that method, you change the sign, you divide by the one in front of x. This one here would have been change the sign 3 over 4. Same as this. This one here would have been change the sign 5 and divide by the bottom. Same. So either way you want to do them, makes no difference at all. The other method is just solving. Right, let's take a look then at these questions. So we've done the first one. We're now looking at 11 and 12, and these are the ones on page 380. So this one here, first thing is multiplying the first by the last, and that gives us minus 112. So again, I'm checking all the numbers for 112, and I come across 4 and 28, and I can see that if I subtract them, I get a minus 24. So 4 and a minus 28 is what I'm going to use to make that minus 24. So I write out my line again. From the first two, I'm going to take out 4 as common, and I'm going to take out x. So when I do that, I divide each of these by 4, and I'm left with 4x minus 7. I take my bracket and I rewrite it over here, and I see that I haven't changed anything from above, so I must have taken out a plus 1. So my line is 4x plus 1 and 4x minus 7. Doesn't matter what order they're in. Okay, so if we're doing the quick way, what I'm doing for this is change the 7 to be a plus, change the sign in the 7, divide by the 4. So it's going to be 7 over 4. For this one here is going to be minus 1 over 4. The other way to do them is to let them equal 0. Bring the 7 across to become a plus 7, divide both sides by 4, and you get this. Same here, bring the 1 across so it's a minus 1, divide by 4, and we get the same answer as we mentioned. Question 12, this one here. Multiplying 21 by minus 14 gives you minus 294. Again, they're very high numbers. They're not going to be this high really. The values that work here are minus 21 and 14. So I change this to be a minus 21 and a plus 14. So I'm taking out what's common from the first two here. 21x is common, so you're left with x minus 1. X minus 1 goes over here, and you take out a 14, and it's a plus 14. So I have 21 plus x and x minus 1. Again, doesn't matter what order they're written in. So here I know that's just going to be x equals plus 1. And here I know I'm changing the sign, minus 14 over 21. And that should say minus 14 over 21. Just be aware of that. That's a little error there. The other thing you can do then is just bring that across. That'll become a plus or a minus 14. You're dividing by 21 and you get your answer. Dividing that in the calculator then gives you minus 2 over 3. Okay, last 3 then. Sorry, last 4. So at this stage you should be kind of getting the hang of them. What we need to do now is just check for these bits here because they're quite hard to get with the larger numbers. So for the first one, 30 by 7 is going to give me minus 110. The values that work there are minus 6 and 35. If you want to take a read through the rest of that, you can pause that there, but everything else is the same as the last few questions. For the next question here then, I'm multiplying 20 by 12, getting 240. The factors that will work here are plus 20 and plus 12. And again, pause that if you wanted to go through it again. This question here, 2 by minus 27 gives you a minus 54, that should say. And then that's a minus 9 and a 6 works for that. And the last one then here, this is a more realistic question. 3 by 7 gives me 21. Values that you're going to use are minus 7 and 3. And again, you can pause the video to read through those last questions.